All right, this is episode 15 of Writer's Block. We got a guest here, Bleh. I think it's I mean, you got made fun of before for that name, but I mean, the official Bleh is really like sort of putting the exclamation point on the outrageousness of that name. But I had a question for you, Bleh, man. I saw HLTV wrote an article about you recently, and I was just wondering, when exactly did you decide to become a useless statistic that doesn't mean anything without proper contextualization?
Wow. I was really drunk, and I was in Valencia, so I think everything's kind of forgiven there.
Okay.
Too much whiskey consumed. Okay. Not always a good idea.
Fair enough. All right. Well, the topic for this week is going to be like hipster hype trains. So maybe in Bleh's wheelhouse, maybe a little Chinese team action coming up. But basically what I get annoyed with, and this is sort of, I think, the general tension between me and Sam on Twitter and on the show, is that I think that people try to latch on to teams. You know, they say, watch out for this team, they're coming up. And in order to sort of, in the off chance that if they do become good, they seem like especially well-informed or knowledgeable, and they boost their... You can retweet your own tweet from like 6 months ago. Look super sick. Grab a sick 1-2 followers. Maybe if you're lucky, someone will post your tweet on Reddit. Sam W. the Prophet sort of thing.
Did someone do that? I don't know.
No, I did that for you one time. I was.
Oh, really? Did you?
When was it? Cadian went to North?
Cadian.
Yeah,
I missed that. I didn't see it on Reddit.
I
know
you
go on Reddit, but
I called you an idiot on this show for suggesting it.
Yeah, I know. It was the best, man. That actually felt nice because I thought that I was happy to see that North did something that was a little risky, but made some sort of like pundit sense, and they were like, so they kind of went down to the pundits level and decided, you know what, fuck it. It's just maybe this will work.
Great name for a show, down to the pundits level.
Yeah,
that's true.
Let's steal that.
My favorite thing was what Thorne on his Instagram little thing had a picture with the GM of North or something. I guess the head of the roster changed. His like nickname was like the Architect. So what I did, I just posted a picture of George Costanza in reply. The fake architect, Art Vandelay. Just like this horrible like needy New York Jew trying to like make it like lie about himself and try to up himself, and like he thinks that he actually knows what he's doing, but obviously because he's picked up Katie and he does not know what he's doing at all. MSL's the one true god. But let's go back to Counter-Strike. So Sam, I saw you not Sam, Max released an article on Ence today. Ence recently won Star Series Season 6. What's a reasonable expectation for this team? I mean, are they a legit top 10 team, or are they a top 15 team that like maybe can punch above their weight sometimes? I think you weren't super clear like numerically in the article, but I think when you do sort of get into the nitty gritty like that, it can get a little tricky because you don't know how other teams are going to fare in the upcoming weeks.
Yeah, especially when the differential between like the 8th and the 15th best teams in the world right now is so low. Like it's I don't know. I think the top 10's a pretty interesting like goal to have as a team right now, given that how sort of I know whether people say it's random because of how weak the group is like outside the top 6, or how strong like the overall top 30 is, if that makes sense.
It's whether you're a positive or negative person, basically. It's a Wallaby versus Sam sort of divide.
So I know which one I fall, which camp I fall into in that sense. But in terms of talking about Ents and where they fit into this whole thing, I definitely think they are a top 15 team. I wrote an article about them after they got clapped out of the minor and didn't qualify for the major, where they lost to Optic and Nip in 2 consecutive best of 3s after having that crazy Cologne run. I think at Cologne they like lose to Navi, and they took a map off of them, but they also beat like a bunch of really good teams in the bracket play. And so there was this contrasting pair of results where you have them showing this crazy good structure structure led by Sergey and Alexi B and Ariel and all these, the sort of main fragging core. And then you see the minor where they have still that structure and still the team play, but very clearly the individuals were getting run over by the likes of Optic and Nip. And so to me, the Star Series result was a pretty validating performance for them, specifically because we saw them actually able to win series against teams that stylistically could run over them, should they not have the ability, like the wherewithal of individual firepower. So to me, even though the Vega series, it felt like it could have been a 3-0 at any point and that they were in control the entire way through, I think the fact it went for a full 5 maps and they're able to prevail is a really, really positive sign for Ence, given to me, they were this team in my head that always had like a high tendency to collapse, potentially, given sort of the inexperience on some players and the inability for some of the individuals to grind back into rounds. And so, yeah, the key for me that I saw at Star Series that sort of validated this team as a top 15 entity was the T side for them, and seeing Ariel and Alexi B having really big numbers on T side, and then also their lack of collapsing in big games and in big moments and the ability to grind back into matches. So with those two things in mind, and then obviously laying it on top of the likes of Sergey having the MVP performance and consistently being so good, and the team play and the structure and the cohesion that everyone talks about, I think they have all the tools to be a top 15 team and pretty consistently. And then depending on how the sides around them shift, I wouldn't be surprised if they were sort of like edged into the top 10.
All right, Bleh, I actually have a sort of an interesting two-parter for you. I saw Thorn actually make a really interesting analogy on Twitter where he compared Vega Squadron to Tyloo. Basically, I think the idea is they're sort of an entertaining team and that they seem to have an aggressiveness, a willingness to make pushes or to make long rotates or flanks and sort of really try to alter the they seem to be in conflict with common perceptions of which risks are acceptable. And then, I mean, with Vega, you see sort of something similar. So one, is that comparison valid? And two, what do you think about this Ence team doing well against Vega? Did you see like a fundamental style of play that could counter a Tyloo or a Vega Squadron? Or did you think it was something else about Ence that sort of gave them the edge in this series?
I think the comparison, like when it comes to Vega and Tyloo, it is true though. I mean, there are certain similarities, right? The way they approach the game, they're very disruptive compared to how most other teams, especially the top 15, top 20, top 10, would play the game. But I think the reasoning behind that is different. Like if you look at Tyloo, the reason they play the way they play is because of their comm issues, in my opinion, right? Like they have these at times really explosive executes and whatnot, and they have the individually skilled players to work with. But when it comes to mid-round decision making, when it comes to trying to make the team work, it doesn't quite really click, right? They don't really have the comms going for them, and that kind of forces their hand and make them go for these kind of nutty plays, so to speak, which are exciting to watch, not really something you'd expect from a team, which is in the top 15. I think that's the reasoning behind that. When it comes to Vega, however, I think they're just trying to be as disruptive as possible, right? They are kind of the underdogs whenever they face off against these other teams, the top 15 teams, the top 20 teams. And for them, firstly, I don't think many teams really have a good read on them, and they're just trying to make things interesting. So I think that's the difference in reasoning as to how these two teams approach the game. But there is, like Thorin mentioned, I think there is a kind of a similarity if we just look at it from a very surface level. And the second part, okay, sorry, it's too early still for me. Ence being, here's the thing, right? When it comes to Ence, I completely agree that Ence are a team that they really do have the potential. And remember, after that Cologne run, even though they kind of choked in the minor, it was a very good looking NIP, and and Ence had a kind of a rough day when they faced off against Optic and against Nip, I do believe it was, and they did come third place. But they are clearly better than most of the so-called tier 2 teams, right? They were dominating over all the rest of the other minor teams, and they really haven't had that many events, land events at the very least. Just opening up the list over here, like they came second place in DreamHack Open Montreal, where they lost to Kingwin. So they still struggle to win against teams when it really matters the most. The pressure probably getting the better of them, especially like you mentioned, the some of the younger players, so to speak. But that matchup between Ence and Vega, I think like given time, I think Ence would probably win more times than not. Like if they face off against Vega in the near future, I think we just got to give it some time and figure out how things are going to go. For Vega, I think they're going to remain still a little surprising. They're going to be kind of like Tyloo, where they're going to be a dangerous team when you face off against these Swiss systems of best of ones. They can't pull off the upset. They can't catch you off guard. But given some time, I think, when they face off against the likes of a top 5 team, for example, I think they're going to get shut on pretty hard. However, Ence, I think, can actually potentially make it a top 10 before the end of the year.
Mm-hmm. Sam, what do you think about Ence? Are you on the Ence hype train? Are you off it? What do you think? Okay, I'll give my opinion on that file. That was a tough file to watch. First of all, the sort of casting pair was an interesting combination with Sponge and
Vendetta.
Oh yeah, okay, Vendetta. But did you catch much of this? I mean, it felt like Ence sort of it wasn't as disrupted by Vega's playstyle as someone like NRG, who seemed very off-put. Do you have a take on this?
I mean, I don't know about NRG. I think for NRG, it might be fair to say that it's more the fact that they're in a playoffs than something else. I don't know. Like you had Daps put that choke GIF like right after the game and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Has been a running storyline for them because, I mean, against any team, even a team that plays like that, even a team like Mouse Sports, NRG should walk over them. So I think that whatever problems they have against teams like that is self-imposed. As for Ence, I think Ence is fine. I mean, hype is a relative term. If they had gone out in the semis of this tournament or something like that, let's say they had lost to Optic, I would have been on the hype train because given other people's expectations of them, mine would have been higher than theirs. But since they won the tournament, everyone accepts that they're a relatively good team. And so, like, how good do I think they are? I think they're not going to be better than, like, if I'm looking at the top 10 list right now, number 9 is NRG, number 8 is NIP, number 10 is Big. I think they can be better than Big, maybe, but I don't think they can be better than NRG or NIP at all. So I have some problems with them. The first one is going to sound strange. It's Alu. I don't like Alu in this roster at all not because he's been playing bad, but because the way he plays is so strange relative to the rest of his team. Like, he doesn't play super aggressive for an opper. It seems like he plays the op almost as if he had a rifle, and it's a very odd fit. And I think the fact that he plays so not passively, his decision making isn't passive, but his positioning and the way he sets himself up early in the round is pretty passive. And I think that given that, like, LXCB is so stressed to make plays in every round that either LXCB gets an opening or they make an execute and Aerial rips people's heads off because he was extremely good at this event during executes, and otherwise their T side's got nothing going. So I think Max, you made a video about this all the way back at Cologne where you're talking about how important LXCB and Aerial are to this team, and I think that if LXCB was even slightly worse in that big series, they probably don't make it out, or they probably drop a map, and then Aerial was unreasonably good in all these. Like, it's hard you don't really notice Aerial because he gets most of his kills during the chaos of executes, but he put up a 120 rating at this tournament, and I think that's unsustainable. He was very good. He is 26 years old, so it would be a strange thing to peak, but he also hasn't had a lot of opportunity because of his nationality. So I think they're fine, but I don't think they've nailed the roster composition necessarily. It's a very weird situation. Serg is definitely pretty good. I think they've got good players, but I think you're going to need to see another move, probably bring in Sunny before they become a team that's like, an actual top 10 team that can make playoffs regularly and make top 4s and things like that. Because otherwise, I think that they're too okay and too reliant on their entries or their first point of contact to actually make an impact against top teams.
Just add on to that, and the reason why, like, I specifically mentioned the importance of the T side was because not necessarily in that it their strength is in their ability to roll over teams, but like Sergey just needs a tiny bit of space to close around, and when Aerial and LXCB aren't that good at all, then you sort of see the problems with Sergey being forced to play as a second entry, and when he doesn't have those resources around the map to actually make plays, you see problems. And the Alu point you made was really interesting as well, especially when you contrast it against JR in the Vega series, right? I think the AWP kill matrix was Alu killed JR 17 times and JR killed Alu 4 times or something like that across 5 maps.
Well then.
And so, yeah, obviously the two completely polar opposite AWPers. And then when you have, yeah, and so I think, and in that sense, I think Alu's interesting because when we talk about these hype teams up and coming, we often associate, at least in my head, I think of like Hellraisers, I think of Optic, I think of all these teams that have like these freewheeling AWPers and stuff, or like at least have the ability to make a large amount of impact onto the round. And then you just sort of have Alu, who's just going to dote around, be super finish all the time, and then just punish the flashier AWPers, which, look, I mean, yeah, I think the Sunny move makes so much sense in this roster, but a key thing that in my Ence research as well that I saw is apparently Aerial had the highest buyout in like Finnish Counter-Strike history or something like that. Like they really went after him to try and bring him into this roster. So I think he's a pretty crucial piece in Ence's plan here. So,
and I mean, to be fair, it's not like Aerial has played bad in any sense. Like the minor, he was definitely less good, but like at a couple of lands now, he's been very good. It's just you feel like maybe this team needs someone who can make along with Alexi B.
The key thing would be to have Sunny to fill in X7's role. Yes. You think Sunny's always been that player who's dude. Sunny's always been that player that's wanted to like low key lurk. People don't realize that. Like Sunny's always wanted to low key be a lurker and to be the site player and to essentially be in a sort of more active variant of Sergey's role in this team. And so that's essentially what X7 does right now. So to me, that Sunny X7 swap would be so perfect for this team and would take them to another level.
I don't agree with you. I mean, I understand. Like, I remember that he told you that, I think, in an interview, right? Yeah. And
sometimes players don't know what they want. MSL ops, he tried to force Pip to opt, like, so, you know.
Sunny's point was that in Penta, he was a more passive player, but I don't know, like, X7 is, like, very much like a small side anchor and kind of the support of his team in a lot of situations, at least. And X7 is also a pretty good clutcher. So I don't look at this team and like, I don't know, like maybe it's because I watched him way more in Mouse than I did in Penta, but when I think of Sunny, I don't think of him as a clutcher or late round player. I think of him as someone who entries and breaks open rounds, even if that's in lurking and breaking open rounds. Yeah. And so I would feel awkward making that switch. And so it's risky, but I definitely think there's you're getting way more guarantee if you're removing Aerial, right? Because that's I don't
even think it's risky though. I don't see how it could be to any negative to bring Sunny in for X7. Because if you're talking in terms of skill, X7 is probably one of the players on the lower end of the spectrum for Ence right now, and he plays a variety of roles that I think Sunny would feel maybe not like totally comfortable, but would be very capable of filling to the same level, if not at a higher level than what X7 was doing. And then on CT side, I'm talking about on CT side, I think Sunny could do that very easily. And then on T side, I mean, X7's often coming in like second or third into the site. He isn't lurking that hard. I think you can still easily have Aerial as a hard entry and then just have Sunny pair up with him. And I think Ence, in that sense, like that one move, I think instantly like puts Ence's skill ceiling so much higher.
Except the buyout's gonna be ridiculous though. So
hey, they just want a big land, bro. We got the money, we got the cash, we got.
Never gonna happen.
Well, this sort of gets to an interesting point. I mean, I wasn't planning on bringing this up, but I mean, there's this sort of interesting trend when you're talking about this about trying to role swap Sunny into a role that he's not familiar with, but he has a good skill ceiling and maybe he could adapt to it. Is sort of the Snacks issue recently, where Snacks was brought in to replace Sticko, then Sticko was brought back, and I had a big argument, or small argument that maybe I should have made bigger, where Dust was calling me out for suggesting that Dozia could be a good fit in Navi over someone like Edward, because I think just in terms of roles, CTT, I mean, everyone thinks this is ridiculous because of Dozia's reputation as a player, but I think, no, I mean, he's a very specific, like Zipnik's-esque CT player where he's very hardcore into supportive small side anchor positions, and that's exactly what Navi needs right now. They have Zeus in those positions. Okay, I'm not going to go through the whole argument, but Bleh, what do you think about this general idea of trying to mold like skill players into supportive positions, or I mean, in this scenario, it's one type of role into another type of role with just a higher skill ceiling. You can maybe see sometimes with Olaf Meister in phase that's sort of working out to some degree, but in other cases, say MIBR, once they lose Taco, then sort of the wheels fall off the cart, right?
Yeah, that's true. I think it completely depends on the team, of course, and what the players are looking for. Many a time, I've personally seen it in quite a few Asian teams personally, right, where I've seen a number of really highly skilled players, and they get put into a more structured team, so to speak, and they'll be like, hey, you know what, you got to play this kind of the bitch role, crucial role, obviously, inside the team, but it's not a position where they can easily drop, let's say, 20 plus frag count every game, regularly. They're going to have a rough time just getting the kills, but they're helping the team get the win, right? But the thing is, when it comes to some of the more younger players, some of the more highly skilled players are comparatively young as well. They usually struggle, in my opinion, trying to fit into this role. They get very frustrated. They start to struggle, and when they realize that they're not able to really get an opportunity to really go off, because like you said, they're playing more supportive role. They're not going to have a chance to really run around. The team's not going to be building their structure, their strats based on setting them up to get the kills, unlike how it's done in certain teams' cases where they have the superstar players like Simple or Cold Zero back in the day for MIBR, getting set up to get all those crazy frags. So it is viable, but it's such a risky proposition, because we saw what happened to Snacks, right? True, Snacks hasn't really been special either, but I'm sure that if you, for example, get in, I'm not able to come up with any good names here, but let's assume there's a player X, right? Like really good player, the guy is, a star player in his team, and then he gets picked up by another team, and they're like, hey, you know what? We're going to be putting you in this particular support role where you have to do so and so and so. Yes, the role will, I think it's a good idea as long as it works for the team, as long as it's a good fit. But I mean, if you just look at it numbers and stats wise, it might make sense. But when you look at the relationships and the mentality, so to speak, of the particular player, it could be a problem. So you need to have the sort of player who's willing to be sacrificial lamb, so to speak, just to set up the team for success. Where I think Sticker was really underrated on.
Yeah.
Right, but I think you got to be careful, because it's not just a mindset thing. It's that when we use the word skill, it's such an all-encompassing word, we might get confused about what we mean, because there's
True.
Expressing skill when you have resources put into you is very different from expressing skill or playing well when you have no resources at all. Like Snacks, even when Snacks is playing or making individual plays, oftentimes he's relying on expectations of the opponent, and he's playing off their attention, which is put otherwise on other players on the team. But if you're holding, let's say you're holding the B bomb site on Mirage, you're the only focus. There's no one else. There's maybe one other player, and you have to play against each other, play with each other, and you don't have the entire support of your team to make an individual play and apply pressure. You're receiving pressure, and you're being targeted. And expressing skill and making good decisions in those situations is very different from other kinds of skill. It's not just about aim, it's about positioning. And there are players that are really good at that are very skilled, like Magisk, but there are others that aren't, maybe, like Snacks. And so you have to be careful. Or Dosha. Well, I wouldn't call Dosha. I don't think anyone would call Dosha a very skilled player, but it's completely possible that Dosha is good at fulfilling that role in terms of that expression of skill. I mean, there's some players that just have like a certain reactive attitude, like Stewie2K, where they have a very aggressive reactive attitude, and they respond to pressure aggressively. And so they can struggle to solo hold bomb sites in which it's not beneficial for them to react aggressively. So Stewie2K is a really good B bomb site anchor on Train, but he might not be on Mirage, for example. I mean, I haven't watched him do B bomb site on Mirage, but I would assume he's not excellent the same way that Zipex is excellent. But he is as good as Zipex, or similar in skill as Zipex on the B bomb site on Train, because he has more room to play to his strength. But you have to be careful. Like, does Sunny, if we're talking about Ence, does Sunny have the ability to play passively, react passively, take a step back and wait for a retake? or just, wait for another opportunity that might be safer, have less risk than the opportunity which he might get a multi-kill, but he also might die with nothing. So like, I'm not sure. I just have a mistrust of players that have been conditioned to always react aggressively because a lot of resources are put into them, and now they're alone, and they make decisions as if they had resources put into them when they don't, and they make bad decisions. That's just my concern. It's not about Sunny specifically. It's about the kind of archetype in which I've seen him play, or that kind of thing.
Mm. Well, I mean, we sort of gotten off topic from the main hipster high train hatred that I came here to discuss, but maybe a good point. Maybe this is sort of we've warmed the water a little bit. I can bring up my complaint, my big point of agitation from last episode: complexity. Now, Max, I think you made a video for, what's the website? Blitz.
Yeah,
and
then just real quick, like that was the most unfortunately time because that was meant to be released before Star Series, except then the League World Champs was on, so the editor got taken away to work on that video, and so I got the thing. It was like, oh yeah, this video will be released like literally directly after Complexity bombs out 03 of groups of Star Series. I'm like, sick, that's perfect time.
Sam, have you changed your tune on Complexity since the last episode after they bombed out of a tournament with
I mean, I don't remember my tune on Complexity. I think I was pretty quiet. I might have been, optimistic relative to people that thought that they were trash or something like that. But I think there's a weird, there's a major hangover going on with a lot of teams. Maybe this is like just me riffing off a narrative that Electronic brought up when they bombed out of. I think it was SL New York, and they're just like, oh yeah, there's 5 days since the major. I still feel like I'm in the final. Some weird PSD.
No, players are really good about creating excuses for themselves.
No, but I actually do think that in terms of teams like Big and Complexity, if you've been playing, for the major, and you have this is your big moment, and you play up and you're super hyped and all that, eventually you have like a tabasis where your energy goes down and your strats have been depleted and you just feel depleted. And so I think it makes sense that these teams are slightly worse. Obviously, Big was less bad than Complexity at this event, but they still were not very good.
Max,
yeah.
Get away from these garbage narratives. Narrative wake, these narratives.
Well, they played a LAN between the major and Star Series. They lost against Avant-Garde at the MSI gaming arena or some shit, and they played 2 overtime matches, which they just barely won against teams I can't even remember. And I think for sure, that almost plays more into Sam's point in that sense, because they just have no time between tournaments, and that's what's so frustrating to analyze, especially with ESL New York and Star Series, because it even calls wins like Ence's into question, because you have these bank of teams which have very clearly taken time off and haven't played at all over the course of the major, and then these teams who have just gone bang 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 bang. Someone like Tyloo went from Zotac, Stockholm, major, retarded China qualifier, and then straight to another event. And then it's how can you even evaluate them fairly as a team when they're just so strung out over so many events? And so I think Complexity for sure suffered from that at Star Series for sure. But the problem with that is that in my head, the biggest detriment to being so stretched out like that over the course of so many events, and this is from talking to players from Australis at Sydney, is that individual skill is the thing that apparently suffers the most from playing event after event after event so many times. Because it's not like you're going to forget how to throw a certain flashbang onto a site, but you might lose 20% of your ability to hit a headshot in a certain situation. And so it's counterintuitive, but taking time off of events is the thing that seemingly enables more consistent individual skill. But for Complexity, it wasn't as much of the individual skill as sort of everything that wasn't going so well for them, which was concerning to say the least, because at the major and when they looked good, I was most impressed with their structure and their team play and these ability to navigate mid-round situations very effectively. And so I don't know whether their inability to do that at Star Series was a direct result of their fragging core in Def, Yay, and Android not performing, or whether it's like the overperformance of certain individuals at the major sort of triggered the good mid rounding and the team play as well. So I think the next event, and it's always that classic thing, we'll just have to wait and see until the next time to play.
So
but I think very, very, very specifically with complexity, it will be that case, because how they choose to approach certain win conditions is going to define my characterizations of them. So if we see them maintain that team play and the cohesion, but it's just their individuals that aren't firing, then I'm on board the third best team in North America complexity hype train. But if we see them lose that and still focus on just trying to get Shazam online, then all bets are off. I'm gonna stop watching them.
All right,
but I do think I do think that there's something to the when you're talking about individual over performances or strong individual performances from players like Def that you wouldn't expect strong individual performances from, and strong mid round calling and all of that. To me, that all sounds like this team just was really focused and really energized during a tournament, and it makes sense that afterwards they would just not have that and not feel as energized. Maybe because they're satisfied, or just because it's a different tournament, like a similar, and that doesn't reduce the things that they did at the major. But to me, the analogy is like Cloud9 at Boston, right? Yeah, Boston. In Boston, where I think that Cloud9 legitimately played great, but I also think that the way they were playing was so it was so intuitive, and it was so okay, let's just do that, let's try that, okay, let's go, and it was so energized that I can easily see how you go afterwards and you don't have the same tempo to your initiative and like concentration and things like this. So I can easily see how, and it's very possible that just never comes back. Like, this team came out of nowhere and could easily disappear into nowhere, not because they're not capable, but because they're not used. Let's say they haven't become a good team in a healthy way, where they just come in, day out, get focused, and do the job. So it would make sense to me if they just disappeared.
I wasn't going to compare complexity's run at the major to Cloud9's complete fluke run at another major. I wasn't going to do that. I mean, I'm glad that you did that for me. But Bleh, Max totally just served you up a softball with an excuse for Tyloo's performance at Star Series. I saw you tweet something like, "I'm done with Tyloo 100%. I'm only CyberZen," and then I checked out the scores. I'm like, what happened with CyberZen? It was like 16-1, right? Got defeated. I realized the timeline.
Yeah, they got shot up.
Pure agony. Is Bleh Hindi for pure suffering? Samsara, is that how you say it?
Yeah, I mean, I hate myself sometimes, right? But
jokes aside, I mean, I sort of not super down for just saying, okay, thinking about energy levels and thinking about tiredness and how that affects aim.
No, just,
I mean, the whole narrative.
Garbage, Matt.
Yeah, just garbage. But
yeah, I'll be very blunt.
You think they're just garbage?
Yeah, okay, not as garbage as CyberZen, but yeah, it's pretty garbage right now. But here's the thing, right? I don't think there are any excuses, so to speak. They had a small little break before Star Ladder, by the way, so it's not like they were completely reamed out after the major, right? Pretty decent performance at the major. They're not playing the minor again, so yeah, that's an achievement. At least the next minor, right? But here's the thing with that team, and I mentioned this almost before Sydney, where I was like, this team's going to plateau out. They're going to plateau out completely, and they're going to reach a level where they're the best team in Asia, just because they have players like Xcurate, like Bentet, and DD and somebody, but they're not going to achieve anything more. They did surprise me, however. They surprised a lot of people by having these really deep runs at occasional tournaments like Sydney, like we saw, and then of course, in the major, they managed to get that one win and ensure they got the next slot into the new challenger stage, or whatever it's called now. But here's the thing. They've still plateaued out, but just at a higher level than what I expected them to do, right? So we're going to be seeing...
sorry to interrupt, but how long has this roster, this exact 5-man roster, been together?
I think close to 9 months. I
mean, that's sort of towards the end of the cycle, right?
Yeah, I think it's kind of done here. They're still the best team in Asia by far. They still do better things than anyone else does, right? And the closest team is MVP PK, where a couple of those players are 30 years of age. I mean, that just goes to show how shit the scene is, right? But at the same time, I think this is a team who other teams should be wary of. Like they do definitely have the upset potential. But in a best of one on a given day, they can take down a top 5 team. They can take down almost any tier 2 EU team, for example. But when it comes to deep runs or winning any tournament, any decent tier 1 or tier 2-ish tournament, I don't see them pulling it off at all. Because I'll be honest, like, yeah, they have the individual skill set. You see some pretty cool tactics coming out from them, but when your comms are non-existent, what can you do in Counter-Strike? Like, you need to have that going for you. But with this entire language mess that they have going, and I don't see them really going for a fix yet. They're still trying to go for this mishmash thing where they call in English, but the call-outs are in Chinese, and 2 of those guys don't even speak Mandarin. So I don't know what the fuck's going on with that team. I think they're just going to remain at this level for the time being, or unless they go for some really drastic change. For example, they can kick out Captain Mo, I think, right now, and they can probably get what's that guy, Bottle from CyberZen, because he actually understands English to a certain degree. Having a Chinese player in your team who can speak English pretty decently might be something which might work out for them, because Bottle did impress me, to be very honest. Even though CyberZen got shat on, he was the shining light in that particular team. I don't know how the transfers work in China, because there's a lot of murky underworld shit that goes on down there. But hey, if that happens, maybe we might see this team achieve something. But for the time being, I think this is it. This is their plateau, so to speak.
Max, you did some... Oh, go ahead.
Wait 1 second. Yeah, just because it's very relevant. Like, how likely is it, or how plausible is it that Execute and Bentet could just go make their own team? And I don't even know which language they speak, but they get some players that are notably worse, but just try to get them back on the level, because they're probably skilled players. They probably just don't know how to play on a professional level, and just sort of train them and make a team that eventually might become, or create a scene that might eventually become reasonable. Because I think Execute and Bentet are like really fucking good players.
I think that is a possibility. The problem is they are Indonesian, right? And if you look at the Indonesian scene right now, the majority of players are crap. Like Benton was. It's honest. It's true. SCA has one decent team right now. It's Bootscape, who just keep choking every single time. Literally one okay team. Yeah. Then you have the Thai teams who are losing to Optic India, which just formed like 3 months back. I still have no hopes for that team, right? I'm just saying how messed up the scene is right now. And then when it comes to Indonesia, there are a couple of decent players, but they're very young. Like, for example, Xcrit's younger brother, I tweeted about this like a year back or something. He's like, 13 or something? The guy is a beast, but he's too young. It's too young to do anything right now. So I think the long term, it could work out. I don't think Benton Xcrit's going to be leaving Tyloo anytime soon, because from what I understand, like, the money they're making there is something which they would never have the opportunity to do so in Southeast Asia, right? So it's never going to happen, at least for the time being. Maybe down the line, once more money comes in, they can probably, come back to Indonesia and try to build a super team, try and impart whatever they've learned. Because bear in mind, Xcrit was very green as well when he joined the team. It took a while for him to really get into his groove as well, right? So it could happen, just not now.
Okay.
Okay, so you think that...
You're coming home the Mandarin textbook and just being like, brother, come here. Just like, it's like, I haven't seen you in so long, Execute. What's going on? Shut the fuck up. Read this book. Read this book. We'll fix the scene together.
So basically what Bleh is saying is basically the Asian scene's only chance is for Bentet's parents to reproduce more rapidly. Fewer intervals between
cloning him, man. Like cloning the guy.
Yeah.
No, but Max, you've done some articles on Tyloo. Are you just gonna bow down to the master of Bleh, or did you sort of have a different take in that?
Yeah, I know. My articles about Tyloo are more so just like me drawing with Sharpies on like the walls of my bedroom, just trying to figure out what the fuck is going on with that team.
It's always funny when a content creator goes into Tyloo, they're like, go into like the depths of the underground, like emerge. Like, I think I figured it out, guys. Someone read my scribbles on the wall and see if it makes sense.
You guys are so lucky. You guys are so lucky that the other Asian teams haven't really done anything yet. Once that happens, you're gonna lose your shit.
Is it more confusing? Harder to grasp?
It makes no sense.
It makes no sense.
It just works.
Okay, so earlier in the show, I sort of mentioned energy. I'm sort of in the middle of an energy binge myself at the moment. I think, here's an odd moment of positivity. I think they top 10 seems about right for them. I think that they deserve to be in top 10. They seem decent. They have some wins over some teams. I mean, that win over FaZe at ESL One Cologne. I mean, unlike Complexity, who doesn't have really any wins over any teams in a best.
I just like how Wallaby's brief moment of positivity is like, the current rank NRG is in is reasonable, and they have some wins on land.
I mean, you know, some other teams that people get hyped about, no really best of threes. Just online, just some
right.
13.
Actually, I have something to say. Yeah, I do have, in terms of hype trains, I will say that Cirque, and this breaks my heart, but Cirque is a massively overrated player.
Yes, yeah. I'm loving this. I am loving this.
Like, there's no doubt in my mind that Cirque is a transcendentally talented player, and eventually he might become the best opera in the world. But let's not pretend that just because he has really sick movement and he shoots real quick that he's been some transcendent player. The two best players on that team are Ethan and Breezy, and the best player on that team by far, and the superstar on that team is Ethan, not Cirque.
Yes.
And so I'm getting a little annoyed because on Analyst Desk and things, people keep mentioning Cirque as an X Factor and things like that. But Cirque is just not that dynamic. He doesn't move around that much, and he hasn't put an impact in playoffs and even in group stages as much as you'd expect of someone of that skill level. Online, he's put up great numbers, and if you just cursorily look at his ranking or at his rating, you might think he's the best player on that team, but he isn't. Yeah. It's Ethan, and Ethan should be getting really hyped up way more than he currently is.
I think just to, I'm sorry to interrupt you over there, but like just to add on to that, I think most of the points most of my fellow analysts would make. I don't think it's them hyping up Cirque. I don't think anyone would actually say he's the best player in the team at all, right? The X factor would be in my books.
People do speak very, very highly of him, and I mean, I've been watching all the old VODs today, and I've heard some ridiculous shit about Cirque. Like he's gonna be the best opera in the world next year.
Okay, I haven't heard that.
He could be.
He could be, but here's the thing.
He could be next year, yeah.
Complexity could be a good team. Anything could be true.
Tyloo could win a major. Nah, never gonna happen. Here's the thing, though. If you ask me, if I was on a desk, and if you ask me why he would be the X Factor, why I would say it would be the X Factor is because if he does show up, it could lead to a win. That doesn't necessarily mean that he's the best player in the team. If that makes sense.
Yeah. Right. No, I get that. But it's just because I have the sense that because he's so incredibly talented, we've already assumed that he's actualized the potential that he clearly has. And so it's very easy to look at Cirque and say, yeah, he's fucking amazing. But right now, he's just pretty good. Like, I wouldn't even say he's a star player right now. And so I think that we should pump the brakes a little bit on that. And it just bothers me a little bit because I think that people shy away from praising Ethan because they think that he's not the most skilled player on that team. Like, and so they think like, oh no, the player that you have to look out for is Cirque because if he shows up, he'll be the best player. But like, the thing is that like what Ethan is doing right now is already superstar level. You don't need to look at what could be with Cirque. Like, no, Ethan is right there and he's fucking amazing. So like, yeah. But as for NRG go ahead.
Oh yeah, no, you could have. This whole segment you just did could have been is probably going to be exactly like word for word my article. I completely agree with everything you're saying. I said this on Twitter a couple days ago. I was watching that Overpass game versus Vega, I think, and Cirque was, I think, really static in that A bomb site. I think he actually missed quite a bit of shots as sort of in the chaos of those last couple of rounds. And I think Ethan has been a very, very impressive player. I mean, you've seen those crazy clips with the spray transfers from Ethan. I think he wins a lot of duels. I think his percentage of duels won is ridiculous. I think he's easily the strongest player. And then Breeze brings something interesting with sort of his aggressiveness. Like I mentioned that phase result. I mean, round 30, down 15-14, Breeze is running down mid on Inferno and gets 3 kills. I mean, I think they have a lot of talent on that team, and it's not just Cirque. Max, did you sort of have a similar opinion on that? No,
I'm just nodding and doing that.
What's really cool, I think what's special about Ethan is that there's no player in the top 10 that really, I think, plays like him. The only player that I can think of that reminds me of Ethan is Zantares. And obviously, sadly, Zantares is not part of a top 10 team yet. So I think that Ethan just plays, he's so confident, and he plays like it's like he dances. The way that he takes duels, the way that he manages his angles when he plays.
No,
I actually haven't, but I should. But he really plays beautifully, and And the only qualm I had with Ethan before is that, and this happened when we started playing Lance with NRG, is that he plays in such a disrespectful style, not just in individual plays, but just his willingness to just bully people by the way he takes duels. And like the way he plays Pop Dog, for example, he plays Pop Dog so forward, and he just moves around in a circle, just waiting for daring someone to peek him. And so that way of playing can definitely not pay off if you're playing against players that are of a similar skill level as you are. But recently he's been playing against better and better teams. Now they haven't played Astralis or Liquid or something like that very often, and so I haven't gauged whether or not he's like a top 5 player. But I think like he just absolutely dominated Optic, absolutely dominated Big. What am I talking about? That's totally the wrong team. He totally dominated in playoffs, and I think that kind of shows that he's probably going to be like whatever happens next in the NEC, even if NRG dies, like this guy is there. This guy's the real deal, and he might be. I would have to think about it a little more, but he might be the best player in NA right now with Twists. I guess that's debatable in quality of competition, but I think he's there, right? Like I think this is real.
I think he needs to play a little bit better teams more frequently to say that.
Yes.
But yeah, no, I'm very impressed with him.
Just jump in on that. I think what's really important when we're talking about, especially with Breezy in that conversation as well, with how they play, it's also the way NRG calls as well. Because I made a video ages ago that, and I'm pretty sure the video was just called "The Big Dick Calls of NRG," where Daps is just a madman in terms of the way he wants to approach a game. I think I was talking to him. What was the event where they beat Tyloo? Was it I Am Shanghai?
Shanghai.
Yep. Yeah, Shanghai. Yeah, and I remember watching the VOD and just being like, wow, NRG are doing such a good job of like matching the aggressiveness of Tyloo and being able to like win these individual duels and not get overrun by the chaos of it. And I DM'd Daps. I'm like, oh, did you find that Tyloo were being like aggressive at all? Like, how did you deal with their volatility? And it's just like, nah, man, we thought they'd do way more Randy shit. Like they just don't even. Like they're so geared towards that confident style and enabling these young players to play that pressuring brand of Counter-Strike that it's so refreshing to see as well, especially when you contrast them against Liquid, who to me plays sort of distances themselves from the North American stereotype of a Counter-Strike team, to then just see NRG have these two young up-and-coming fraggers that are just popping heads around the map. Awesome stuff. Love it.
Yeah, but I think their reliance on their individuals at the same time and playing a forward-moving style has bitten them because of their struggles in playoffs. When they feel a little more pressure, I think if they start not being, and it's not like they can't aim anymore, things like this, but I think it's just little things like feeling a little stressed, not considering everything and getting caught off by one and done or things like this.
I think that Vega series is the perfect example of what you're saying.
Yeah. So like I was watching the Vega series with NRG right before this, and there was like 8 takes where like they wouldn't expect Tony Black to be so forward, and he gets a triple kill when he should have gotten a single kill. And to me, that just looks like the comms are a little chaotic. They're a little scatterbrained, and so they're struggling to capitalize as much as they would normally.
Well, I want someone to timestamp this moment, because this is when like Sam descends into like an NRG addiction and they slowly become a shit team, and then he's just stuck with like North in one hand and NRG in the other. He's just like forced just hold the
I'm definitely there. Yeah.
Identities that forever
Yeah, I am there for sure.
Well, but there's something interesting here with go ahead.
No, I just want to mention about how like we're talking about Breezy, we're talking about Ethan and everyone else. I think what's going to decide where this NRG team winds up in the next few months would be Daps. I think he's very good at what he does, but he has a bit of growing to do as well alongside, for example, Cirque. And we saw this obviously at the minors, where when shit went down, sure, all the other younger players where they shut up, they weren't calming properly, but Daps shut down as well. Now, as an in-game leader, that's a huge no-no, right? Especially when you're leading a bunch of very young, but kind of volatile or emotional players. I Am Shanghai, they were kind of helped out by the fact that Tyloo completely shot the bed in the finals. The pressure got to them. But that's the thing. I don't think they've been tested enough. I think they just need to play a little bit more against some of the better opposition, like, which Liquid plays against all the time. And then, see how Daps grows as a leader. If he does his job right, if he can kind of like, wean the likes of Cirque and all these guys off, just change the mentality, so to speak, just, elevate to the next level, it's going to be Daps, not going to be anyone else. I think Daps, more than anyone else, is the X factor in this team.
Well, there's a lot of interesting things with Daps. First, I think the style that he's calling in NRG is very different than Optic and Liquid way before that. I think he's really sort of developed his sort of mid-round willingness to change in the mid-round and sort of the ballsiness that Max is talking about. I think as an individual player, he's sort of struggling a lot, especially sometimes I saw him doing the double op. I wasn't a big fan of that at all. I think he was really struggling with that. But actually, I'll sound to start like a obsessed fan, maybe because I am a little bit. But I actually found a pretty interesting comparison between Daps and MSL. Okay, yeah, okay. I mean, this is a little silly, but I'm serious about this in that. Okay, MSL, what's the knock against him? The biggest knock. Okay, he's too bad of an individual player to be in the best team in the world, even if he has sick players. Well, if Daps really does have two really sick players in Breeze and Ethan, and a decent opper, a good opper, maybe with some growing to do in Cirque. I mean, is Daps a liability moving forward? I mean, because I think he's more likable, people want to believe that he can push this team to the next level. But is he sort of a training weight, a lagging factor, a nagging factor that's going to stop their development moving forward if they do get roster change following this iteration of the team?
I'm not sure that, because in that Vega series, I thought Daps was like pretty good. So like I think Daps, I haven't seen, I haven't looked at, for example with MSL, I looked at VODs of him play CT sides. Like I definitely haven't done that with Daps. So maybe if I see him, play A side cobblestone, I'll get tilted and start hating him in some way. But at the same time, I don't know that. I feel like there's other people in that team that haven't maxed out, especially Cirque and even Breezy in semifinal situations or playoff or stage situations, that I think you have to wait until that maximizes, or if that maximizes, before you look at that. I think with MSL, I wouldn't even say that his individual play was the biggest weakness. It was just a weakness. But at the same time, one of the reasons that this that comes to our attention is because everything else in the team seems to be maxed out, seems to be working. And so, oh yeah, AZ's playing well, AZ's playing well. It's a miracle, and then Valde's playing well, Kirby's pretty good. And you're looking at that and say, what's missing? Or they're playing pretty well, they're calling pretty well. Well, maybe Mertz is a bit of a problem, and MSL is a bit of a problem. So you're looking at what the problems are. And I feel like there are more things to address in NRG before you look at Daps. But I think it's plausible, because if you're looking at a lot of the top teams now, if you're looking at Nitro, if you're looking at Glaive, those players are definitely stronger than the likes of MSL, Zeus, and Daps, right? So I think it's something to look forward to, but I don't think it's something that you need to worry about yet. You need to see how they can perform if Cirque can become a very strong player, and Breezy and all that firepower core can perform against top teams, before you start looking at Daps and wondering if you need to make a change there.
Well, I mean, Fugly's obviously a name that's sort of brought up. I mean, do you think that he certainly seems like a serviceable player, but I mean, you think maybe a player like Automatic could slot in that role? He's obviously a very, very good player. Or maybe, I don't know, maybe even sort of the Studio 2K with what roles he's doing right now. He could slot in if MIBR falls apart. I mean, there does seem to be upgrade potential there.
Sure.
I mean, this, like I was saying with Tyloo, I think the exact date for the start of this roster was January 15th of this year. So they've been together quite a long time now, over 10 months. So it's sort of, I mean, it doesn't seem like it seems plausible that they're going to continue to grow exponentially or significantly beyond the sort of low top 10 level. I mean, Max, do you see something to this? What, if there's an area of improvement roster change wise, or what do you think about the Daps?
Well, even though it's been 10 months, you have to think that their sort of LAN run together, when was
started
their first,
in May? It started in May, late April, very end of April, first day of May.
Yeah, because it was 9am Sydney, right? That was their
Yes.
first. Yes. Yeah, so I don't know. It's one of those interesting things where I think the looking up and seeing the ceiling in front of them might sort of bait them into holding on to this roster for too long. I can definitely see that. And I didn't even consider the potential of automatic into this NRG roster. I think that's definitely an interesting, at least an interesting discussion to have for sure. So there's two factors there. The idea that NRG have to climb up into like actualize this potential, but then also the pressure of potential roster moves coming below them. And so it's these two factors that I think will definitely see at least some trajectory change for NRG in the coming months, I'd say. I think in terms of them actually being able to become a better team, maybe like higher up in the 7 to 10 slot in the world rankings, but I don't really see how they could suddenly just become this incredibly consistent playoff powerhouse side that someone like Mousesports, even though they couldn't like win tournaments or anything like that, would always find their way into playoffs and score best of 3 here and there when after they had their run. So yeah, I don't know. I would probably bank on NRG to oscillate between the 7 and 10 slot, but maybe not change too much outside of that.
All right, Bleh, you're a little late coming on this, but I sort of on the show, MSL is a frequent topic. He's our hero and our number one villain. Love and our hate. I mean, like, there's all these arguments with him concerning, like, okay, how much does he provide fragging wise, and how good is he as an in-game leader? How much is he providing in terms of that? I mean, what do you think about Daps thinking about in this sort of classic, I hate in-game leaders who don't frag sort of mentality? Are you a guy who sees Daps and be like, what if they got Tarek in there and got him to in-game lead? Or do you really respect what he's doing, and you think that maybe parts around him, like a Fugly, could be improved?
I would rather go the second route where you try to improve a player like Fug, because look at Navi, right? They got Zeus.
Yeah.
Of course, help out with the fact that he also has the best, double duo in the game. Yeah, so to speak, right? But I think obviously I really don't think like Ethan and Breezy and Cirque are on the level of a simple electronic. But at the same time, looking at the trajectory, yes, it's been a while, but they've only started showing what they could do comparatively recently, right, in the past 4 months or so. So I'd like to still see what Daps can do with this team, because like I mentioned, I think he's still growing as an in-game leader as well, as a player as well. And I personally feel like, maybe if you can like figure out how to really activate Fugly, like you mentioned, improve him as a player, or even switch him out. If you're going to change anyone, I would not want to change Daps out right now. If push came to shove and you'd be like, hey, you know what? You need to make a change right of management's like you need to kick out a player or whatnot, then I would probably replace Fugly with maybe an automatic, like you mentioned, maybe someone else, but not Daps, not as a juncture. Maybe at least I'd wait it out till the end of the year, maybe the next major perhaps, and afterwards I would probably try to, think about what major change we might have to make here. But I think given a little bit of time, maybe replacing Fugly, of which I'm not really convinced about, I think they can still potentially, break into the top 6, top 5. It can happen. It might not happen as well, but I think only time can really tell us here. We can just speculate for the time being.
I mean, I don't think the top 5 or top 7 is very much in lockdown at all. I mean, I was looking at HLTV's rankings today. MIBR, with 0 top wins over top teams, are number 4 in the world on HLTV's rankings today. I think that's absurd.
You got Northern FaZe at 7 and 6 as well, and they haven't really looked unbeatable
in terms
either.
Of trajectory of like the midterm, I would put my money more so on NRG remaining at that bottom of the 10 level than like transcending it.
Yeah, no, I mean, I don't have, as I said at the beginning of this sort of energy topic, I don't think they're gonna get there. But I mean, it seems like they do have room to grow if they did a roster move or something dramatic. I mean, there's obviously upward mobility possible in the scene right now in the lower top 10. I mean, if a team like Energy would be willing to make a dramatic move or change something, I mean, it seems perfectly capable to move up. Though I do think with the current roster they are.
So is the prediction then that they win a DreamHack Open and then everyone calls them a top 5 team in the world, but in actuality they're one of the top 10 team? Is that the prediction?
No.
I think my prediction is they keep winning. I think there sort of could be. I see my issue. I haven't gone all the way through the timeline. I'm still sort of like in the summer with them, going through their VODs and writing the article. But I mean, I'm not sure about this narrative that Sam's brought up, and I saw Thorn bring up on Twitter with them failing in playoffs. I need to
Well,
watch.
I mean, what I mean, but it's not like they're terrible in playoffs. But when you lose to, like, there's no reason for them to lose to Vega. This is something that this is a narrative that was created by Daps himself on Beaker's Advantage, where he talked about exactly what Bleh was talking about. Where he's saying like, "Hey, I don't know, the team just shut down, and I couldn't get them back into the game. You know, we just couldn't. We weren't communicating properly, and it's my fault because I couldn't get the team to start, you know, get up and running again." And so this is something that seems to be a problem for them. I try to assign the choking label very conservatively because I never wanted to apply to TSM back in the day. But I think that if the IGL himself says that they have problems with that, I think it's fair to say. Like I don't think it's so bad that they can't win a playoff round, obviously. Right. But I do think that it's a bit of it does hinder them a little bit when it comes to their individual performances. But I think Stubby 2K would be a terrible move for this. But I think Tim would be a pretty good one. I know I said no because I don't want to like. There's this. That's
why I mentioned Stubby 2K. Like I read your reaction. I'm like, oh, maybe this isn't a good idea. I'll do it.
To me, it smells like Sticko Snacks a lot, but like. Because I think Fugly's been fine. But the reason that the automatic one specifically interests me a bit is because automatic, like one of the problems with NRG is that Daps and Fugly are always the ones left in clutches. I don't know if you've noticed this. This is anecdotal, but I've definitely noticed that Daps and Fugly are often the only ones alive.
Well, that's sort of the curse of the small site rotator or the small site anchor.
Right. But you definitely feel like if your stars are aggressive forward moving players, exactly. you kind of have, you want someone who's not necessarily like going, you don't want a superstar, you just want someone that you feel confident can perform in clutches. Like I even think Sticko is pretty good in clutches. And so I think Tim is a kind of player that's definitely more passive, definitely very cerebral, very smart with his utility. I respect Automatic as a player a lot. So I think that he could totally move into this team and perform. As long as he can communicate as well, he could perform better than Fugly. The only worry is that if you're slotting into Fugly's role, you're not playing like you're not performing individually as well as he is currently on a dead C9 roster, right? Like he's going to have to play more passively, and Automatic hasn't done that in a while. So I don't know how comfortable he'd be going down from a major winner to the fourth pawn on what should be the third best at A team. That seems like a steep drop in terms of I think my ego would be hurt if I had to do that. So like I can easily see Automatic looking at the other players on that team and like surely I'm better than Breezy, or surely I'm better than Ethan, even though maybe he isn't. But so I on the psychological level, but like I've talked to some people that know Automatic. I haven't talked to him personally, and he seems like a pretty cerebral, pretty humble guy. And so I think that move would make some degree of sense. It would just be it's risky on the psychological level. But I ship it.
Okay. Well, I don't think my goal for this episode was hipster hype trains. I don't think we got enough hate. Is there a team that you absolutely think is garbage, that you think people say are decent or good, and you just think like, no, guys, these guys are garbage? Who is your complexity? Bleh, do you have a guy? Renegade.
I have a lot of teams, but nothing relevant. So
nothing relevant.
Let me see here.
G2, but that might be about beating a dead horse. I mean, they just lost like a best of 3 against Wendigo today, I think. So
Gambit, I think, kinda. You can kind of say.
No.
The interesting thing is that top 4 at ESL 1 New York, right?
They beat Astralis twice. Sorry, not Astralis. They beat Navi. Yeah, my bad. That's.
I mean, that's legit, but they are breaking apart right now.
I just finished writing a script for Blitz about like that best of the ES1 New York upset, and looking at like pouring over all the games and listening to all the post-match interviews and stuff. To me, and this wasn't going to be included in the video, but they're like the kamikaze pilot of CSGO right now, where it's like Hobbit knows he's going to leave the team. is just this insanely talented player that can purchase the Mac 10. And it's insane to watch those two best of threes. I strongly recommend watching it because you just see what can be done when you just stop giving a fuck as a player. Like I think Hobbit drops 100 plus ADR or something in the Inferno game and just has the most unreasonable pushes on both sides of the map that destroys just a depleted Na'Vi who have just, just got clapped out of the grand final by Astralis and just looking to like skate through ES1 New York. Then Hobbit just comes out of nowhere.
Anyway, to be fair, Max, Gambit did win a major when they stopped giving a fuck. So
it's true.
Like maybe that's something that there's something to that.
That's weird
with that team. Well, I mean, maybe it's just that the way they try, the way that they try to make strats and all that, like just none of them jive with that. They all hate it, or they can't. One reason would be they just hate when someone tells them what to do, right? Because they have no proper in-game leader in that team, and so you have some makeshift in-game leader.
Blade's the coach of that team.
He's the coach, but he's not the in-game leader.
Okay.
So you have someone like telling you like, oh no, you need to not go for the don't go for this. You need to save. Like Hobbit's telling Adren to save. Adren's like, oh fuck you, I don't care, you little bitch boy. Or something. I mean, I don't know if you.
I think
say that, but something like that.
Yeah. I think the tension on Gambit is mostly that. I mean, stylistically, they sort of lost their identity after Zeus left, and they sort of fiddled around with Fitch. I do think they're super bad right now. I mean, there's sort of that. I think watching them, it did seem like really just like kamikaze last stand sort of thing, like Max was saying, with that ESL 1 New York. I never thought they were going to be a good team. I mean, maybe if they somehow kept Adren and Hobbit and got an in-game leader and kicked. I actually think, I mean, everyone thinks I'm crazy. The entire rest of the world thinks I'm crazy, but I wouldn't kick Doja. I mean, I think Mir is sort of superfluous on that team. I would try to get it.
What?
I think on Mir in those two best of threes against
I think he's a good player. Don't get me wrong. I just think role wise, I think he's a very talented player. But
I think he's super talented, and I think if we're talking about,
I mean, his form might be better than Adren. You could talk about Adren or Mir in that team.
If my hatred of Gambit is this umbrella nested like firmly inside of it is like this secret love for Mir that I like this unrequited thing where I think he's low key just an insane aimer. Like, cause it's just aim. It's just aim, and that's all he has. But at least it's something. And it's really fun to watch.
Okay, I haven't watched a ton of the recent Gambit, to be completely fair. But what other teams?
I'm not for 2 years.
We all just took a 1.5-year break on that.
I have an overrated team. Big.
Yeah. Okay.
Massively overrated.
Okay, here's the thing, though. People hating on Smooya is actually getting me to like Smooya. Like, I think, he's an annoying guy, but he's doing really well.
I mean, he's really annoying.
Yeah.
But, I mean, no, I think it's weird because I think people either really, maybe this is because of his personality, but either people really hate Smooya for his personality or hype him incredibly because of his performance at the major. But I think that Smooya is, to me, is a lot like Draken. And I don't mean that he just misses easy shots.
I think he's way better than Draken.
I mean Draken now, but not Draken, not 1.20 rating Draken when he was a nip, one of the best operas in the world. But I just think that Smooya, the way he plays makes me feel like he flexes a little too hard. So in that best of three against Ence, I think he really struggled to find his form on Nuke, and he kept trying to make wild shots and trying to peak over and over again. And he would he wouldn't miss. He would be taking hard shots, but he would be missing the hard shots, and he'd be ending up not getting any kills instead of getting maybe that one kill, right, or something like that. Or he'd continue to push pressure and put his team at a disadvantage, and he ended up getting out. Like the casters ended up saying that he's getting out by Alu when Alu did nothing that game, but he just, in comparison to Smooya, did better. And so to me, that's that. I'm worried about his mentality, not in general, but his mentality to his style in the game. I hope that he developed this sort of off mode where he's like, okay, I'm not playing amazingly right now. Let me just relax and get back into it. I don't think that he's quite learned to relax yet. So I'd be careful to call him an incredible player. People have said he's the best player on Big. still think maybe I just like riflers more, but I still think Tapson is massively
Tapson.
yeah, he's an amazing player, and he's very underrated. And I think that they rely much more on Tapson than they do on Smooya. But at the same time, I think Smooya's fine. Like and he's definitely good enough to be on big. But I'm worried that he's not what people are making, like people that like.
No, he's not a superstar player anywhere near.
But the thing is, at the major, you could have been deceived.
I mean, that's some HLTV stats shit. I think not. I don't know if the people I think were pointing out like, whoa.
No, I mean, obviously he overperformed statistically.
Yeah.
But he did play he did play very well. So at least in my opinion, he played very well. And so
versus complexity.
Well, no, overall, but fair enough.
Bleh, did you ever thoughts on big? So actually, now I think about it, they are a pretty divided team where people think like, oh, you gotta look at these tactics by God. B, Smoothie's really good, Tapson's sick, but some people like, you know, they go the other end and go, they're looking at Tizian and Nex, like these guys are shitters. They're not going anywhere. What's your thoughts? Do you have a general?
I think, yeah, I mean, everyone knows Big lives and dies by God B, right? I mean, he's the guy behind the team, for better or for worse. And I like his approach, I won't lie. But remember what happens to players who don't really gel with that structure of his, or formula of his, right? And one thing is, like you mentioned, I don't see Smooya sticking around this team for much more longer unless he kind of reins us in emotions. And he tries to, like you said, you know, calm things down when things aren't going his way. Just believe in the system, make it work, instead of trying to prove himself to, I don't know to whom, right? There's no need to do that. He's there to win the game, to work in the system. And we know, like, Gambit does have the system in place. He doesn't really have the firepower, but just with the system, he's able to have these deep runs, pull out some crazy upsets. And what you don't need in that formula is a young, hot-headed kid who wants to, you know, just prove a point that, oh, you know, I lost a duel, I'm just going to push in and take that pick again. I don't know how Gambit tolerates that. I'll be very honest, right? I think he's being very, very lenient with him. I think the kid has a lot of potential. I think he does have a pretty high skill ceiling. He's got that cockiness. I like that cockiness. You know, he likes a little bit of trash talk, a little bit of banter. That's all cool, nice and dandy. But yeah, unless he reins his emotions in a little bit, especially in the server, I don't see him lasting in his team even till the end of the year.
Right. And then there has been issues that he feels like he's being bullied in the team or something by the Germans or something like that. I think it's interesting because he's such an awkward fit into big. Like into,
but in a weird way, like personality-wise, yeah, awkward fit. But like in terms of gameplay, I actually think he's a great fit in the fact that he doesn't fit at all. Right. Because he's just so independent. He doesn't care. He doesn't speak their language. He can just sort of play the way he wants to play. Have some good impact in some games. Have really good impact in some games. Maybe some games look really silly and childish, or just bad, right? But I think the sort of dynamic, the loose opera who doesn't even speak their language is sort of an interesting fit, that non-fit that fits.
I see that. No, I see that, and that was sort of my thought when Magis joined Astralis. Obviously, that didn't turn out that way. Magis fits very well into their system, but there's something to the fact that when you're always on the straight and narrow, you know, some of that Dionysian spirit really helps you out in order to break open some games. I think that at the same time, like Smooya, I think it's true now that I think of it, that when you're talking that he's just trying to prove himself. It really does feel like, you know, this guy was a guy that got kicked, I think, from Epsilon or something like that, and then he got dubbed by Richard Lewis the Rat King, and you know that was his point. And then, you know, he joins Big out of nowhere, and then he wins Cologne, right? And then, goes second in Cologne, and then suddenly, and he wasn't amazing at Cologne, but you know, he was okay. And then he looks exciting, and everyone's on his dick, and then he continues, and he plays better and better, and improves. Like this is like everyone's talking about Smooya now. Even people shitting on him are talking about him, like the mouse player. And so he's kind of reveling in it. But I think that if Big continue to have placings like this one, where they get, you know, beat out by, you know, a team that's like that's okay, but definitely not, like Big probably thinks that they should beat Ence any day, and they probably should beat Ence on most days. So like I think if you continue to have that, that becomes not exciting anymore. That's not new. That's not cool. That starts getting jarring, and that's jarring for the fans. That's also just jarring for your teammates. if you're always shouting, "Let's fucking go" and shit like that, you know, when you're beating complexity. Yeah, you know, because you have a really good rating or something like that. I think that can be a problem. But I think Nex is the problem in Big. I think that's why I'm so off. Is because I really don't.
Recently.
Yeah, and I know that people really shit on Nex, so I don't want to like say I don't think he's a terrible player, but I just think that he should, considering his role on the team, if you take them to be a top 10 team, you probably want more out of him. And so that's to me, if you're looking at a point of improvement, you're probably looking at Nex, not Smooya or Tizian. I think Tizian's fine.
And I think the fact that they picked up Smooya really helps out Big in one aspect, that now they're not like hamstrung by having to pick up only a German player, right?
Right.
There are not that many German players right now. Now, used to the system, like, even if they kick Smooya, it's not a big switch up for them to continue in English. They can pick up anyone. Right. So yeah, I think all things considered, I do agree that Nex probably is the weak link, and even Smooya as well, but I never got it. I just don't understand how Smooya fits in that team, at least personality-wise. And just looking at the Germans, and they have this wild, British kid, yelling and screaming and whatnot,
right,
which is cool. But I don't think he just fits in the team. But yeah, I think all things considered, the good thing which they can take away from this is now they can actually comment English. That's a good thing. I wish Tyler did that.
Well, I mean, I think it's sort of this. It almost makes Smooya more ballers. Like, everyone calls him the Rat Kim. I saw that thread on Reddit. Like, almost every single comment was hating on him, and like it was all his teammates almost seemed like fucking annoyed by him. And this guy just like goes out and just has great games. Doesn't care that literally his own mom is making fun of him on Twitter. And like, dude's just like doing really well for a 19-year-old guy from Britain, by the way, or UK.
In a way, he's kind of like a way less cool version of Simple. You know what I mean? Because he's less skilled. He's not Russian.
Doesn't have that Russian cool.
Right, Ukrainian. Sorry, but there's a lot less swagger there. But in the same way, it's kind of the same thing. You're skilled. And you're skilled enough to get away with that behavior. But I think, like, as we learned with Simple, you only can really make it work when you chill the fuck out. Like, Simple isn't that kind of toxic player anymore. I mean, obviously he's older, he's more mature. But like, I don't think that I think Smooya needs to be more composed than he is now, both in his game and his personality, if he wants to be part of a team that can be successful over a long period of time, if he wants to be a staple of a top 10 team.
Is Smooya really toxic though? I mean, that he's loud.
No, he's not. I don't mean like he's telling people they're fucking shit. I just mean that he's a disturbance in the game, right? Like I don't think I mean, I don't know, but I haven't heard of anyone say that he rages at his teammates or anything like that. If anything, I've heard that people rage at him inside the server. But I think that it is still very disruptive to your team. I mean, I don't know. To me, maybe it's my sensibility.
To the dudes he's popping their domes off of, dude.
Yeah, but at the same time, if you feel like someone is reveling in their own success, and focusing on their own success and not the success of the team, that can become quite annoying, because you feel like, oh yeah, sure, you popped off, great, like, sure you but even like I can see God be, I can see Smooya playing like, oh, I'm gonna re-peak 4 times and he gets 3 kills. I'm like, fucking yeah, and you can see just God be in the back saying like, no.
Please just throw a fucking flashbang for the love of God. For the love of God.
Yeah. So that's definitely an awkward spot. But if he can stay in this team, and I would like for him to stay in this team, I think they should try to look internationally. I mean, they don't have the leverage. That's the problem. Like I remember saying on a podcast with Machine and Dust that that Big should have picked up Dennis, but that seemed very strange at the time. But something like that. Or something like Rops, and obviously that won't happen. But someone like
here's
that.
a thought I had: why not Snacks for Nex?
I'm so over Snacks, man.
That's not as bad as trying to force him into a Tizian role, right? I mean, I think he had his moments at ESL 1 New York.
Yeah.
Okay, but here's the upside of Nex though. If Nex is on your team for a significant period of time, someone like Smooya will age 1,000 years real quick. Really, just like burn out all this.
Okay, Max, what do you think of Big? Because you haven't spoken yet, and I can see your face full of judgment.
It's just judgment at like trying to form an opinion on Big that I feel is coherent and add something.
Right.
I think, in general, big to me is that team that has like contrasting elements that add novelty and flavor to their honeymoon period, but will be the scapegoat for their failures over the long term, probably. Because there's that classic thing, you know, like how in all bottles of expensive perfume, there has to be that tiny little smell of shit to make it like to really bring out the aroma. And so, you know, you can fit Smoother into that analogy how you want. And,
Oh my God.
And yeah, I do definitely. I didn't even consider the dynamic of the system being called in English. I don't know if fucking snacks is the right move for it, but I definitely think there are options out there for big to what does their actual thing stand for? Berlin International Gaming, to live up to that acronym. But yeah, I think like we'll probably continue to see big have their individual, like we'll actually, probably the best way to say it is we'll probably see Tabson continually be serially underrated until like there's probably some left of field roster move where he gets picked by a better team, which is secretly what I want. I would love to see Tabson somewhere else, because I think he is low key. Actually, now that I think about it, I actually tagged Tabson in something where I was just saying, I think I said something on Twitter to the effect of like, is it that Tabson's really good, or Godby that makes Tabson really good? Like, how does that dynamic work? And then obviously Tabson just replies like, it's all Godby, baby. But I obviously think that Tabson is like an exceptional player that could probably be, depending on the trajectory of this team and how they opt to roster move away from a almost certain doom. I'd love to see Tabson get picked up somewhere else.
But I think with Tabson, maybe it's my prejudices, but I do fit him in a certain archetype of players like Rush and like Breezy, where I feel like they really met. But I think that they're players that have a lot of success inside a structure. That they're aggressive, but they're not aggressive in the sense they're not Dionysian, they're not random, they're not making crazy individual plays. They're making plays that are smart, conservative, and fit into a system, just succeeding at it in a way that's very surprising or very impressive.
Aggressive when they're forced to be regressive.
I thought Adren would be a good parallel too with the
Adren too. Yeah, exactly. That is the kind of archetype I'm poking at or trying to figure out.
An intelligent player, but someone who's in roles where he's forced to be aggressive and is pretty successful. Right,
but not someone who just does crazy shit all the time. Right. Like, I think that if Tabson was forced to do crazy shit, he would be probably still a good player, but I don't think they would be as impressive as he is now. In the same way that I think that Breezy looks really good on this team, partially because of NRG's structure and because of NRG's structure making it okay for him to move forward, and that there's resources put into him moving forward, and that he has specific places where he needs to look and so on. That's all to say that I don't want like Tabson to join Mouse Sports or something like that, which would be, you know, the natural fit in some way if you wanted to add him, not as obviously as a sport player, but like in terms of international team that isn't FaZe. But you might alternatively want to, if you pick up an actual in-game leader for FaZe, you might be looking at replacing Rain with Tabson. That could make sense for me. If contingent on the fact that FaZe would play, you know, not with Nico as the in-game leader. That's sort of the contingency.
I mean, it's for sort of a different podcast, but I think FaZe should not switch out Kerrigan, should switch out a different player. So another sort of my life cycle theory is like they've been together for 14 months. It's time to change something, and it's not. I don't think Kerrigan's the problem. You could slot MSL in there.
No. No, I don't think that Kerrigan is the problem, but I feel like you would have to remove 2 or 3 players of the team in order to really make things fresh if you're not removing Kerrigan, right? I don't think that removing a single player works. Like, if you just cut Rain and you add Tabson, let's say, I don't think that that's enough. Like, I think you'd have to make substantial changes, change the identity of the team. And Kerrigan is like, you know, IGLing a new team, really, not just another version of FaZe.
Maybe. All right, but that's for another podcast. Any final words for this one? We good? We crushed it.
Ethan is really good.
Ethan's sick.
Yeah,
Ethan's a top 10
almost
player
as good as Tyloo. Almost as good as Ence. So I think we solved the podcast. We're gonna go Tabson to Mouse Sports, Sunny to Ence, Ence to number 1. Walby puts podcasts from online to offline.